Where Three Rivers Meet. An original story by Eloquence. She came looking for her father's country. She found herself. She found them. The river does not choose one bank over another. It touches both. It needs both. Without either, it is not a river at all. It is only then, in the fullness of its banks, that it becomes something worth following. Rumi. Prologue. Anja Okafor had never once in her 29 years felt complete. She had tried to explain this to therapists, 3 of them, over the years, and none of them had found a diagnosis for it. She was not depressed. She was not anxious, not technically. She was, as her last therapist Dr. Elaine Marsh put it in their final session, a woman of extraordinary depth searching for a container wide enough to hold her. Anja had laughed at that, paid her copay, and never gone back. The incompleteness was old. It lived in the space between languages. She spoke English, conversational Hindi, and a smattering of Yoruba her father had taught her before he died. It lived between worlds, the Black American neighborhood in Atlanta where she grew up with her mother, Diane, and the India-inflected Hindu household her mother had maintained in her father's memory. Incense burning every morning at a small altar in the hallway where a photograph of Ravi Okafor smiled out at the world like a man who knew exactly what he was. Ravi Okafor had died when Anja was 4. She had no memory of him beyond photographs and the stories her mother told, the way he laughed too loud at his own jokes, the way he wore cordas to the grocery store without embarrassment. The way he had loved Diane Vasquez with a devotion so complete it had frightened both their families and ultimately, after years of softening, won them all over. He was Nigerian British. His family had settled in Lagos and maintained a compound there, 3 generations deep. He was Hindu by conversion, a long story involving a gap year in Varanasi and a guru he would speak of only in the quietest moments, a man who had told him, "You are not lost. You are gathering." Anja had thought about that her entire life. She was gathering. But gathering what? The letter from her father's eldest sister, Auntie Kayamaka, arrived on a Tuesday in March. It was handwritten on cream stationery, the Inca deep indigo, the handwriting the kind that spoke of boarding schools and deliberate practice. It said simply, "Your father always meant to bring you. He would want you to come now. The compound is ready. We are ready. Come to Lagos, Anja. Come and see what you come from." She booked her flight that same evening. She did not know that 3 brothers were already waiting. They had been waiting, in fact, for years. Chapter 1. Arrivals. The heat of Lagos hit her before the plane door was fully open, a wall of warm, living air that smelled of red earth and ocean, and something green and growing that had no equivalent in Atlanta. Anja stood at the top of the jetway stairs and breathed it in deliberately, closing her eyes for just a moment. "Ma, you are blocking," said a small boy behind her, and she laughed and stepped aside. Murtala Muhammad International Airport was a beautiful chaos, families reuniting with the particular ferocity of people who had been too far apart too long, porters weaving between the crowds with impossible stacks of luggage. The air alive with Yoruba and Igbo and Hausa and English and French from the Air France arrivals. Anja pulled her carry-on behind her and tried not to look as overwhelmed as she felt. Her sign was easy to spot. A tall young man in a white agbada held it at shoulder height, Anja Okafor, written in large letters, and beneath it, a drawing of a sun hand-drawn, slightly lopsided, clearly improvised. She smiled before she even reached him. "You drew a sun on my name card," she said. He grinned. He was maybe 25, with her father's same high forehead and a gap between his front teeth. "I am your cousin Emeka. Welcome to Lagos. My mother says I must bring you safely or she will not feed me for a week." He reached for her bag without asking. "You look like your father." Something cracked open in Anja's chest, quietly, like a window unlatching. "People keep saying that," she managed. "I've only ever seen photographs." "Then you will have much to see." He steered her toward the exit with the easy confidence of a man who knew exactly where he was in the world. "The compound is 40 minutes. My mother has been cooking since yesterday." "Since yesterday?" She started with the pounded yam at 7 p.m. She woke at 3 a.m. to begin the agusi. "She has been waiting for you a long time, Anja." He said her name the way her father's voice sounded in old home videos, Anja, not Anja, a softness at the front of it. "We all have." The Okafor compound was not what she had imagined. She had imagined something modest, perhaps a modest house and yard. What she found was a sprawling property behind high white walls, a main house of 3 stories with wide verandas on each level, and 3 smaller goose houses arranged around a central garden where a fountain moved quietly amid flowering plants she couldn't name. There were people everywhere. They came off the veranda as the car pulled through the gate, and for a moment Anja thought there had been some confusion, a party, perhaps, something she hadn't been told about. But then the first woman was at the car door before Emeka had put it in park, pulling it open, pulling Anja out of it and into arms that smelled of cocoa butter and palm oil, and something deeper, older, that Anja had no name for but her body recognized. "My brother's child," the woman said against her hair. "My brother's child has come home." This was Auntie Kayamaka. Anja had known it before the introduction. She had her father's face in the same way a river has its source, undeniably, completely. She was perhaps 60, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with trying, dressed in a wrapper of deep gold and green. Anja did not cry. She had promised herself she would not. She cried. And then she was passed, gently, from Kayamika to another auntie, Auntie Ngozi, rounder and louder, who held her at arm's length and examined her face with open delight. She has his mouth, Ngozi announced to no one in particular. And Ravi's eyes. Exactly his eyes. Ravi's eyes were brown, said a voice from the back of the crowd. And her eyes are brown, Ngozi said serenely, so I am right. There was laughter. There were cousins she couldn't count yet, children running figure eights around the adults, teenagers watching her with open curiosity, a pair of elderly men on the veranda who raised their hands in greeting without rising from their chairs. Anja was ushered inside, seated at a table that had been extended with every leaf it owned, and fed. She ate pounded yam and egusi soup and jollof rice and fried plantain and something called oha soup that her tongue had never met before and immediately loved. She ate while her aunties talked over and around her, filling in the shape of her father like archaeologists assembling a recovered artifact, the stories of his childhood, his time in England, his conversion to Hinduism that had scandalized and then softened the family, his love of chess and terrible singing, his marriage to Dai and that everyone now admitted had been perfect. He used to say, Auntie Kayamika said, refilling Anya's glass without being asked, that loving your mother was like learning a language he had always known but never spoken. That it was recognition, not discovery. Anja set down her fork. He never told me that story, she said. My mother never told me that story. Some things, Kayamika said gently, you had to. Come here to hear. She met the first of the Sigh brothers at the compound gate, at 7 in the evening on her first full day, when she was sitting on the low wall near the fountain trying to call her mother, and getting spotty signal. She was mid-sentence. Mom, I keep trying to tell you, the compound is enormous. It's not what when the gate opened and a man walked through it and stopped. He looked at her the way you look at something you have been waiting for without knowing you were waiting. He was tall 6'3", perhaps, with dark skin that caught the evening light like polished mahogany, a close-cut beard, and eyes that were very dark and very direct. He was wearing a simple linen shirt, cream-colored, the kind of garment that looks effortless on men who are built like architecture. He carried a small paper bag and a bunch of flowers that she recognized as the same kind that grew along the compound's east wall. Hold on, Mom, Anja said. You are Ravi's daughter, the man said. Not a question. His voice was low and unhurried, accented with something she couldn't place, British undertones, but warmer. I am, she said. And you are. He crossed the courtyard to her with the measured ease of a man who never rushed. He set the paper bag down, transferred the flowers to his left hand, and offered his right. Adi's neighbor. Old family friends of your aunties. My name is Kolade Sigh. He held her hand a beat longer than a handshake required, and he knew it, and he did not. Pretend otherwise. These are for Auntie Kayamika. She has a fondness for these particular flowers. A small pause. I did not know I would also be delivering them to someone this beautiful. Anja raised an eyebrow. That's very direct. I have found that directness saves time, he said, and there was no arrogance in it, only an ease, a settled quality, as if he were simply observing facts. How long will you be in Lagos? I'm not sure yet. A few weeks, at minimum. Good. He picked up his bag. Then we have time. He moved toward the main house and then stopped, turned back to look at her. Finish your call. Then come inside. Auntie Ngozi is making chin-chin, and she will be offended if no one eats it fresh. He went inside. Anja put the phone back to her ear. Mom, something just happened, and I'm not sure what it was. Her mother, who had excellent instincts, said, tell me everything. Chapter 2. Kolade. He took her to the market on Thursday. This had been negotiated across 2 evenings of compound dinners where Kolade had appeared with the regularity of a man who belonged there, which, she was beginning to understand, he did. The Sigh family and the Okafor family had been intertwined for decades, business partners and neighbors, and, as Auntie Ngozi put it with theatrical vagueness, very close friends in every sense. What does that mean, very close in every sense? Anja had asked. Ngozi had smiled the smile of a woman keeping an excellent secret. It means go to the market with the boy and stop asking me questions. The market was Balagan, a massive, organized storm of commerce that spread over several city blocks, the stalls packed so closely that the overhead fabric awnings bled into each other and created a kind of roof. The smells layered: fresh fish, dried peppers, fabric sizing, frying akara, motor oil from the mechanics at the market's edge, the particular sweetness of fresh ginger roots sold in bundles. Kolade moved through it with a native ease, his hand at the small of her back, not possessive, not presumptuous, simply present, guiding her around obstacles before she'd seen them. She was aware of his hand with a specificity that was distracting. You cook, she asked, watching him examine tomatoes with genuine focus. Reasonably well. My mother insisted all her children learn. He pressed a tomato gently, nodded, selected it. She said a person who cannot feed themselves is not yet fully formed. She sounds like my mother. Does your mother cook? My mother makes puja offerings every morning and then eats cereal for breakfast. But she can make my father's egusi from memory. She learned it specifically so she would never lose him completely. Anja picked up a bundle of uziza leaves, smelled them. I learned the recipe too. I make it every year on his birthday. Kolade was looking at her with that settled, unhurried attention she was beginning to recognize as specific to him, as if he had all the time in the world and had decided to spend it looking at her. That is devotion, he said. It's just cooking. No, he said quietly. It is not just cooking. They ate at a small chop bar near the market's edge, a plastic table and 2 chairs and a woman who served them pepper soup with goat so tender it fell from the bone. Kolade watched her eat with open satisfaction, like a man who liked feeding people. You like watching people eat, she observed. I like watching you eat, he corrected. You eat like eating is worth your attention. Most people in my social world eat like it's an obligation. And your social world is? A small smile. Sigh Industries is primarily commodities and shipping. Our family has interests in 5 countries. The people in my world tend to eat at tables where the experience is curated and the conversation is designed and nothing, including the food, is quite real. He picked up his spoon. You are the most real thing I have seen in a very long time, Anja. She looked at him directly. You say things like that without flinching. Would you prefer I flinch? I don't know what I prefer. She was being honest. I'm still figuring out what I'm doing here. In Lagos, I mean. With this whole, she gestured at the air around her, all of this. What does it feel like? She thought about it. Like I've been reading a book with the first chapter missing and someone just handed me the missing pages. He nodded slowly as if she'd confirmed something. Then you are exactly where you should be. He kissed her that evening in the compound garden, standing among her father's auntie's night-blooming flowers, with the sound of music drifting from the main house and the sky doing that thing it did here. That particular Lagos dusk where the light went amber, and then deep rose, and then a purple so rich it looked painted. She had not seen it coming, which was unusual for her. She had seen most things coming her whole life. They had been standing looking at the fountain, their conversation having settled into a comfortable quiet, when he turned to her and said, very softly, may I? She understood what he was asking. She said yes. He kissed her slowly. That was the first thing she noticed. Not slowly as in hesitant, but slowly as in intentional, as in he had made a decision to do this properly and intended to follow through. One hand came up to her jaw, tilting her face toward him, and his thumb traced her cheekbone as if mapping it. He tasted of the bissap they'd been drinking, hibiscus, lightly sweet, and the kiss was exactly like his voice, low, unhurried, complete. When they separated, she kept her eyes closed for a moment. Well, she said finally. Yes, he agreed. You are very good at that. I intend to be good at everything I give my attention to. She opened her eyes and found him watching her with that same still, clear gaze. Something in her responded to it in a way she didn't quite have language for. Not the flutter of infatuation, something older. Something that felt like recognition. Like a missing chapter being handed back. Chapter 3. The auntie's verdict. Anja woke the next morning to the sound of her aunties in conference. She could hear them through the guest house window, Kayamika and Gozi, and a third voice she hadn't catalogued yet, sitting on the veranda below with their morning tea. The specific rhythm of women who have known each other so long their conversations overlap like braided hair. She was not trying to eavesdrop. But the window was open, the morning was still, and her name carried. Already likes him, Gozi was saying. I saw them in the garden. The way she looked at him after. One of them, Kayamika said, and there was something pointed in it. She doesn't know yet, the third voice said, older, slightly rougher. Auntie Adiz, she would learn. The eldest of her father's sisters. She cannot know yet. Let it happen. It's not fair to the girl. It is exactly how it should happen. Did we not agree? Let her know them each first. Separately. She needs to choose with her whole self, not her mind first. Her mind will argue. Her whole self will know. A pause. She is Ravi's daughter, Kayamika said. A statement. An explanation. Yes, Adiz said. Exactly. Anja lay back against her pillow and stared at the ceiling's slow fan. She did not know what they were discussing. She filed it away. The morning called for other things. Auntie Adiz was the one who took her to the temple. There was a small Hindu mandir on Lagos Island that had existed since the colonial period, maintained now by a small community of Hindu Nigerians, Indian Nigerians, and a scattering of converts and seekers. Her father, Anja's aunties told her, had contributed to its renovation in the early 2000s, long before he moved abroad. He never stopped being Hindu? Anja asked, walking beside Adiz through the morning streets. He never stopped being anything he truly was, Adiz said. That was his gift and occasionally his complication. She smiled sideways at Anja. He added, never replaced. Yoruba culture, Igbo family name, British education, Hindu practice, American wife. He said that each thing was a room in a larger house, and only a fool would refuse to live in all the rooms they were given. Anja was quiet for a moment. I recite the Gayatri mantra every morning. I have since I was 6. My mother taught me. But in Atlanta, I always felt like I was doing it slightly wrong, like I was borrowing something that wasn't quite mine. And here, I don't know yet. I'm still trying to feel it. Adiz nodded as if this were exactly the right answer. Your father said the same thing when he first went to Varanasi. He wrote us a letter. He said, I am trying to feel it. I think feeling it is the whole work. The mandir was simple, white-walled, fragrant with marigolds and camphor. Anja stood before the main altar, Ganesh at the center, Lakshmi to his right, a photograph of a guru she didn't recognize, and felt something she hadn't expected, the absolute absence of the feeling of doing it wrong. She closed her eyes. She recited the Gayatri mantra quietly, in her mouth, for herself. When she opened her eyes, Adiz was watching her with an expression she would later identify as relief. Welcome, Adiz said simply. To all of it. Chapter 4. The Second River. She met the second brother 5 days into her stay, at the art gallery opening that cousin Emeka dragged her to on a Friday evening. You cannot come to Lagos and not see its art, Emeka said, pressing a glass of palm wine into her hand. Lagos has some of the finest contemporary African art in the world. Also there will be small chops and I am hungry. The gallery was on Victoria Island, a clean white space with high ceilings and excellent lighting, the walls hung with large format paintings that blended Yoruba cosmological imagery with something that felt urgently contemporary. Anja moved through the room slowly, her wine forgotten in her hand, genuinely absorbed. She stopped in front of a painting that arrested her completely, a woman rendered in blues and golds, her back to the viewer, standing at the intersection of 3 rivers. Each river was a different color, one red, one green, one deep indigo. The woman's arms were slightly outstretched, palms up, as if offering or receiving. The painting had no title placard. You have been standing here for 8 minutes, a voice said beside her. She turned. He was as tall as Kolade, but differently built, leaner through the shoulders, with an expressive quality to his face that Kolade didn't have, as if every thought moved through his features as it occurred. He was handsome in a way that was immediately visible and somehow restless, like a man not yet finished becoming what he was going to be. His eyes were the same deep dark as Kolade's, and yet somehow different. Livelier. Darting between her and the painting with equal interest. I counted, she asked. I was watching. He didn't apologize for this. I wanted to see when you would move. You didn't. She turned back to the painting. Do you know the artist? Very well. A pause that held something she couldn't read. What do you see in it? A woman who is the point where things converge. She tilted her head. She's not drowning in the rivers. She's not fighting them. She's just standing in the place where they meet. Like that's exactly where she belongs. Silence. She looked at him. He was looking at the painting with an expression she could not name. My name is Taiwo, he said finally. Sigh. I am a friend of your family. She shook his offered hand. His grip was different from Kolade's, quicker, more animated, the handshake of a man who used his hands to talk. Anja Okafor. You're connected to the Sigh family. You could say that. His eyes returned to the painting. Would you like me to tell you about this piece? You said you know the artist well. Extremely well, he agreed, and something like amusement moved across his face. Come. I'll tell you everything. Taiwo, it emerged over the course of the evening, was the painter. He had studied at Central St. Martin's in London and at a residency in Dakar before returning to Lagos. He painted, he explained with the casual certainty of someone who had made peace with their own complexity, the places where things are not supposed to coexist, but do. Like that painting, Anja said. The rivers. Exactly like that. He refilled her palm wine without asking. 3 things that should dilute each other. Instead, they define each other. The red river only looks like red because of the green beside it. The indigo is only deep because of what's next to it. A pause. Convergence intensifies. It doesn't diminish. Is that the thesis of the show? It is the thesis of my life. He said it lightly but meant it. She could tell the difference. You said your father was Nigerian and Hindu and Black British, and that you grew up in a Hindu household in Atlanta doing Yoruba prayer rituals alongside your morning mantra. I didn't say all of that. Your cousin Emeka told me. He has been telling everyone who will listen. He's proud of you. Taiwo smiled, and it transformed his face entirely. It was wide and warm and a little crooked. As is appropriate. You are remarkable. She looked at him. He was nothing like Kolade, where Kolade was still water, deep and clear. Taiwo was moving water, quick and bright. And yet she felt, with him, a version of the same thing she'd felt in the garden 5 days ago. Not the same note. The same chord. You say things directly, she observed. She had said this before. To someone else. She couldn't quite locate the memory. Life is short, Taiwo said. And you are only in Lagos for a few weeks. I would like to not waste them. He turned to face her fully, the gallery sounds fading behind them. Will you let me show you something tomorrow? There is a place I paint outdoors on the lagoon. I think you should see it. She thought of Kolade. She thought of the compound garden and the amber dusk and the deliberate kiss. She thought, I am not promised to anyone. I am still gathering. Yes, she said. I'd like that. The lagoon at dawn was a painting Taiwo could never fully capture, he told her, because it changed too fast, the water going from black to silver to gold in the space of 20 minutes, the horizon impossible to fix, the light breaking differently every day. He set up his easel and paints without self-consciousness and began to work while she sat on a folded cloth beside him and watched. Most people want to talk when I paint, he said, his brush moving quickly. You're quiet. You're working. It doesn't bother me. Talk. I hear better when my hands are busy. So she talked. She told him about growing up between worlds, the Hindu altar in the hallway, the egusi soup on her father's birthday, the way her friends at school had never quite known what to do with her. She told him about the incompleteness she'd carried so long she'd stopped expecting it to resolve. And now, he asked, not looking up from the canvas. Now I'm here, and something is happening. She pulled her knees to her chest. I don't have words for it yet. Some things arrive before the language for them does. He cleaned his brush. My mother used to say that. She was a poet. Used to. She died 8 years ago. She and my father together, in a car accident. His voice was steady but careful, like a man walking a path he knows well but still watches. There are 3 of us. My brothers and I. We have been each other's family since. I'm sorry, she said. And then, 3 of you. And then he didn't. Elaborate. He was loading his brush with a gold that matched exactly what the water was doing. Look at that. You can't plan for that color. It just happens. She looked at the water and let the question go. She looked at Taiwo, at the focus line of his jaw, the way his whole body oriented toward the canvas, the particular intensity he brought to beauty, and felt something warm and complicated move through her. She was in trouble. The pleasant, interesting kind. He kissed her before she left, standing at the edge of the water with the finished canvas, still wet behind them. His kiss was nothing like Kolade's, it was immediate and searching, his hands in her hair before she'd quite registered they'd moved, a hunger in it that was openly stated. She kissed him back and felt the difference between him and the other man, and filed it away. Kolade's kiss was a promise. Taiwo's kiss was a question asked without apology. Both of them, she thought, walking back to the waiting car, were things she wanted answers to. Chapter 5. Family Mathematics. The compound had a rhythm she was beginning to learn. Mornings were for the aunties' tea on the veranda, the day's plans negotiated in a mixture of English and Igbo, occasional Yoruba when Auntie Adiz was making a point she wanted to emphasize. Anja was pulled into this rhythm without ceremony, handed a cup of spiced tea and assigned a seat and treated as if she had always been there. She loved it with a ferocity that surprised her. "You're making a face," Emeka observed one morning, appearing at her elbow. "What face?" "The face of a person who did not know what they were missing until they found it." She looked at him. He was eating an orange section by section, leaning against the veranda railing, watching her with the affectionate shrewdness of a cousin who had been dispatched to take her measure and was reporting favorably. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me. The aunties see it too, but they won't say anything because they don't want to rush it." He offered her an orange section. "You're happy here." "I am." She took the orange. "I also feel guilty about how happy I am. Like I should be sad instead, because I'm only here because my father never brought me, and he's gone, and you can be sad about the absence and happy about what you found." Emeka said it with the simplicity of someone who had grown up in a family that understood complicated feelings. They are not the same emotion. They can coexist. This whole family is built on things that coexist. She heard Taiwo's voice in her head. Convergence intensifies. It doesn't diminish. "Your family and the Sigh family," she said carefully. "How long have they been close?" Emeka's expression did something small and complicated. "Long time. Old friends. You know Kolade. And Taiwo." "I know the Sigh family, yes. There's something you're not telling me." He ate the last of his orange and pushed off the railing. "There are things," he said, "that are better understood through experience than explanation. That is the family position on the matter, and as a loyal family member, I am honoring it." He kissed her on the forehead. "Come. Auntie Ngozi is making moi, and she needs someone to peel beans." The afternoons, she was discovering, belonged to exploration. Lagos was not one city, but many cities wearing the same name, the ordered avenues of Ikoyi, the controlled chaos of Lagos Island, the artistic energy of Surulere, the hum of commerce on Victoria Island, the water between them all, the bridges that stitched the archipelago together. She explored with different family members each day, Emeka for the markets, cousin Adana for the art spaces, Adana's teenage daughter Zara for the food spots that Anja would never have found on her own. She was falling in love. Not with a man. With a place. With a version of herself that only existed here, in this air, in this heat, with these people who shared her nose and her father's voice. She called her mother every evening. "You sound different," her mother said on day 8. "Different how?" "Full." A pause. "Ravi used to sound like that when he was home. Like a cup that had been topped off." Her mother's voice was careful with the emotion in it. "I'm glad, baby. I'm so glad. Mom, there's also a man. 2, actually." A very long pause. "2," her mother repeated. "It's not, I haven't. It's just, I've met 2 men who are both extremely interesting, and I can't quite explain what's happening." "Are they competing?" "No. That's the strange part. No one seems to be competing. It's like everyone around me knows something I don't." Her mother was quiet for a moment that stretched like taffy. "Your father," she said finally, "used to say that the river doesn't choose between its banks. Auntie Kayamika told me that quote. It was Rumi. Your father lived it," her mother said. "He was the most naturally polyamorous person I have ever known. Not sexually, though that's its own conversation, but in the way he loved. He loved everyone at full volume. He never had a partial love to give. It was all or nothing every time." She paused. "I have wondered sometimes whether you got that from him." Anja sat with that for a long time after the call ended. Chapter 6. Kehinde. She met the 3rd brother on day 10, which she would later mark as the day the whole shape of the thing began to become visible, not clearly, not yet, but the way a face becomes visible in a magic eye image, suddenly there after you've been looking long enough. She was at a restaurant on the water. Auntie Adiz had sent her alone, pressing an address into her hand and saying only, "Go at 7. Ask for the corner table. Eat the fish. You will have company." When Anja had asked what company, Adiz had waved a hand and gone back into the house. The restaurant was built on a deck over the water, the kind of place that had no interest in being flashy wooden tables, excellent local art on the walls, the sound of the water beneath the floorboards, the smell of fresh fish and herbs and wood smoke from the kitchen. Anja asked for the corner table. She was reading the menu when she became aware that someone had arrived and was standing beside the table, and she looked up. He was looking at her with an expression she had no category for. It was not Kolade's settled attention or Taiwo's restless brightness. It was something she could only describe as recognition, and it moved across his face for just a moment before he collected himself, and it was gone, replaced by a calm courtesy. He was as tall as the others, with the same dark beauty, and yet again, entirely different. There was a quality of stillness to him that reminded her of deep water, but not quite Kolade's still water. Something more deliberate. He wore glasses, dark-framed, and carried a book under his arm. He was dressed simply dark trousers, a well-cut black shirt. Anja Okafor, he said. Her name in his mouth sounded like something he had been holding carefully. Yes, she said, slowly. I am Kehinde. Sigh. Your entities thought we should meet. He gestured to the seat across from her. May I? She studied him. The Sigh family seems to be everywhere I go. We have been here a long time. He sat. He set his book on the table. She clocked the title, a collection of Singer's poetry. We are old family friends of your family. I apologize for the slight orchestration. Your aunties have their methods. You say orchestration like there's more to it. He looked at her steadily from behind the glasses. There may be, but I would like to simply have dinner with you first, if that's acceptable, before anything more complex is discussed. The honest directness of it was disarming. She found herself relaxing. Fine. What's the fish? Red snapper, braised with utazi leaves and locust bean. It is extraordinary. I have been coming here for 11 years. You look about 32. 33. I started coming at 22. With my brothers. Something moved across his face. It was the first restaurant we came to after our parents died. We came here because it was one of the places they used to bring us. We needed to be somewhere that had them in it. She understood this in a way she hadn't expected. I do things like that too. With my father, I mean. Places he never took me, but I imagine he would have liked. Yes, he said quietly. Exactly that. They ordered the fish. They ordered palm wine and then water, and then, when the food came, they stopped talking for several minutes because the food required attention. You eat like eating matters, Kehinde observed. She paused. Set down her fork. Someone said that to me recently. He tilted his head very slightly. Said nothing. She picked her fork back up. Filed it away. Kehinde, she learned over the course of 2 hours and a dessert neither of them had planned to order, was the CFO of Sigh Industries. He was the one who managed the fortune, who had built it from the inheritance their parents left into something that now operated across 5 continents. He spoke about this without pride and without apology, the way a craftsman might discuss the object they had spent their life making. You love it, she said. The work itself. I love problems that can be solved. Finance is a series of problems with elegant solutions. I find that peaceful. He removed his glasses to clean them, a brief, habitual gesture that made him suddenly look younger. Taiwo accuses me of turning everything into a balance sheet. She went very still. You know Taiwo, she said. The smallest pause. Yes, quite well. I met a Taiwo Sigh at a gallery last week. He is a gifted painter. Kehinde replaced his glasses. His voice was entirely neutral. Did you enjoy the gallery? Something was happening. She could feel it with the same instinct that had served her all her life, the instinct for subtext, for the thing not being said. But the conversation had moved on, and Kehinde was asking about her work in Atlanta, and the fish was extraordinary, and she let herself be redirected. Later. She would think about it later. He walked her to the car. She had a driver from the compound, a taciturn man named Sunday who read a novel in the front seat while she ate. They stood outside the restaurant on the water deck for a moment, the Lagos night around them, the lights on the lagoon, the sound of music somewhere down the dock. I would like to see you again, Kehinde said. You're very sure about that. I am very sure about most things I want. He looked at her with that deliberate steadiness. Not everything. But you, yes. I am sure. He paused. I should be honest with you. Go on. There is something I want to tell you. About my family. About the situation, perhaps. But I think it needs to be the right moment, and I think you need a few more days to find your footing here first. She looked at him. That's a very elaborate non-disclosure. I know. I apologize. It is the most honest approach I can take right now while still honoring some complexities. He held her gaze. Do you trust me? She thought about it. Really thought about it. I barely know you. I know. But oddly, yes. I think I do. She shook her head. I don't understand why. Perhaps, he said, because some things are recognized before they are understood. He kissed her goodnight. Unlike the others, unlike Kolade's deliberate warmth, unlike Taiwo's searching hunger, Kehinde kissed her like a question he already knew the answer to, gentle and certain and complete. She got in the car. Sunday did not look up from his novel. She stared out the window at the passing city and thought, 3 men. 3 kisses. 3 different things. 3 things that felt, in some way she couldn't yet articulate, like facets of the same jewel. Chapter 7. The shape of things. Anja was not a woman who ignored patterns. She had a graduate degree in behavioral science. She had spent 4 years studying the ways human beings constructed meaning, formed attachments, built structures of understanding from the data of their experience. She was not, in other words, a woman who let coincidences accumulate without examination. By day 13, the coincidences were significant. She laid them out in her notebook, a practice she'd had since graduate school, ordering the world on paper when it became too complex for her mind alone. All 3 men, tall, dark, extraordinarily handsome. Old family friends of the Okafors. Named Sigh. Each has mentioned, my brothers. Each has made reference to something they cannot yet fully disclose. Each kisses differently. Each sees something in me I cannot see in myself. The aunties clearly know something they're not saying. Emeka deflects when I ask directly. The painting Taiwo showed me at the gallery, 3 rivers meeting at a woman. She underlined 3-4 times. She sat back. Then she picked up her phone and called Emeka. I need you to come to the guest house. Right now? Right now. He arrived in 12 minutes, which told her he had been expecting the summons. He sat across from her at the small table with the expression of a man about to confess to something he'd been hoping not to confess to. Kolade, Taiwo, and Kehinde Sigh, she said. Are they brothers? Yes. Biological brothers. Yes. All 3 of them. He looked at her carefully. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking you to tell me what I should have been told already. Emeka folded his hands on the table. He was quiet for a long moment, and in the quiet she heard the compound around them, the fountain, a child's laugh from the main house, the distant sound of the evening call to prayer from the mosque down the road. They are triplets, he said. Identical. The Sigh triplets. Kolade, Taiwo, and Kehinde. They are 33 years old. Their parents, old family friends of ours, business partners for 2 generations, died in 2017. The 3 brothers have run Sigh Industries together since, and they do everything together. Everything. He paused. Do you understand what I mean by everything? She was very still. I think I'm beginning to. They have been in a configuration, is the word they use, since they were young men. They decided together that they would find one woman. Not each separately. Together. One woman who is designed for all 3 of them. He met her eyes. Anja, your father knew their father. Your aunties have known this family your whole life. When Auntie Kayamika wrote to you, it was not only to meet your family. It was also to introduce you to the possibility. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the fountain. So this whole thing was arranged, she said. The introduction was arranged. Everything else, Emeka spread his hands. Everything else has been entirely you. How you responded to them. How they responded to you. No one arranged that. And Anja, his voice was careful and kind. You have been responding to all 3 of them. That is not nothing. That is, do not say fate. I was going to say information. She turned from the window. He looked back at her with an expression she recognized, finally, as hope, not his hope, but his hope on behalf of everyone in that main house who had been waiting 29 years to give Ravi Okafor's daughter what they couldn't give her father. The chance to come home whole. I need to think, she said. Of course. I need tonight. Take as long as you need. He rose, touched her shoulder briefly. But Anja, you have already been kissing all 3 of them and liking it. That is also information. He left. She stood in the center of the guest house room and thought about 3 rivers. Chapter 8. The River's Choice. She sent a message to all 3 of them. The same message to 3 different numbers she had collected over 11 days without connecting them. Come to the compound tomorrow at 6 p.m. All 3 of you. Together. It's time. She watched the read receipts come in. Kolade first. Then Taiwo. Then Kehinde. None of them responded with words. That night, she sat with her aunties on the veranda and told them she knew. Kayamika absorbed this with perfect composure. Gozi made a sound that was half triumph, half relief. Adiz simply nodded, as if a prediction had been confirmed. Are you angry with us? Kayamika asked. Anja thought about it honestly. No. I think I understand why you did it the way you did. I think if you told me before I came, or when I first arrived, I would have run. She looked at the fountain. I needed to know them first. Each of them. As themselves. And now that you know them? Now I know that I've been falling for 3 men and thinking I was confused. She looked at her aunt. I'm not confused. That's the strange part. I feel less confused than I have in my entire life. Adiz, who had said nothing, spoke. Your father was a river. I know. You are also a river. Some people, she said, are wide enough to carry more than one current. She reached across and took Anya's hand. This is not a lesser love. This is a larger one. Anja held her aunt's hand and felt, for the first time in her life, the missing chapter not just in her hands, but inside. Her felt it settle into place with the quiet certainty of a window closing against the wind. They came at 6, precisely, all 3 of them together. She saw them through the guest house window first, coming through the compound gate side by side, and she understood immediately, now that she was looking for it, why she had not seen it before. They were staggered in their approach. They dressed differently. They carried themselves with enough individual distinction that the sameness of their faces had registered only as a familiar quality she had attributed to type. Now she saw it. The same jaw. The same height. The same dark eyes. 3 men and 1 face, expressed in 3 entirely different ways. She went to meet them in the garden. They stood in a loose triangle, Kolade still and attentive, Taiwo watching her with barely contained emotion, Kehinde with his hands clasped behind his back and an expression of careful, prepared honesty. Anja looked at all three of them. You kissed me, she said to Kolade. You kissed me to Taiwo. And you kissed me to Kehinde. And none of you told me you were the same family. We are not the same person, Kolade said. That is important. But you are. We are brothers, Kehinde said. We are triplets. We are a unit. And yes, we pursued you together, knowing what we were doing. Knowing what we hoped for. Which is. It was Taiwo who answered. He answered it the way he painted, direct, without apology, reaching for the exact color. You, Anja, all of us, together. A life we build as 4 instead of 1 and 3. The garden was very quiet. The fountain moved. I don't understand why you want me, she said. Not helplessly, curiously. You don't know me. It's been 2 weeks. We have known about you, Kolade said, for longer than that. Your father's family spoke of you. Your aunties showed us your photograph when you were 19. He paused, chose carefully, we recognized something. In theory. We needed to know whether theory became truth when you were in front of us. His eyes were steady on her. It did. For all 3 of you. We do not compete, Kehinde said. We never have. We want the same things because we have always wanted them together. She looked at Taiwo. He was the most undone of the 3. She realized, the emotion closest to the surface. His jaw was tight and his eyes were bright, and he was very still in a way that told her exactly how much it cost him. Say something, he said quietly. Please. She looked at all 3 of them. She looked at the convergence of them, this impossible, specific, 3-chambered thing. She thought of her mother, a cup that had been topped off. She thought of Taiwo's painting. 3 rivers. A woman in the middle with her palms up. She thought, I have been incomplete my whole life, and I thought one man would complete me, and one man never could, and this is why. I need time, she said, to understand what this looks like. Practically. Actually. She stopped. I need to ask you questions. Real ones. About your lives, your expectations, what you are actually proposing. I need to not be swept off my feet into something I don't understand. Anything, Kehinde said. Every question you have, Kolade agreed. Taiwo said nothing. He just looked at her with everything showing on his face. She took a breath. Then come inside, she said. My aunties made dinner. We are going to talk for a very long time. She turned toward the main house. Then she stopped and looked back over her shoulder. And Taiwo. He straightened. The painting, she said. The 3 rivers. You painted that for this, didn't you? He held her gaze. I painted it, he said, when I first heard about you. 5 years ago. A pause. It took me that long to get the colors right. She turned and walked toward the main house. After a moment, she heard 3 sets of footsteps following. Chapter 9. Questions in the dark. The aunties served dinner and then, with the collective dignity of women who understood when to stay and when to leave, excused themselves. Anja sat at the table with the 3 brothers and asked her questions. She asked them for 2 hours. They answered everything, the way their household had worked since they were young men, the way decisions were made, the way love had functioned between them as 3 people who were not one person, but were also not simply separate. They talked about their parents, who had been each other's greatest loves and who had modeled for them what devotion looked like when it was genuine. They talked about what they were offering, a life of complete provision, not as ownership but as partnership. Her bloodline changed for generations, yes, but also her complete freedom within that, her faith, her practice, herself. You mentioned an heir, she said carefully. A family, Kehinde corrected. If that is something you want. If not, that is also a conversation. He was precise about this. Nothing about this is coerced. If you come to us, it is because you chose it with your whole self. And if I choose to leave at the end of these weeks? Then you leave, Kolade said. And we will have been grateful for the time. She looked at Taiwo, who was the one most likely to tell her an unvarnished truth. And what do you actually want? She asked him. Not the policy. What do you, Taiwo, want from this? He was quiet for a long moment. I want, he said, to watch you become yourself. All the way. The parts you haven't discovered yet. He met her eyes. I have painted incomplete things my whole career, and I have always been more interested in them than in the finished ones. You, Anja, you're a painting in progress. And I want to be in the room while you finish becoming yourself. All of us do. He stopped. Found the words. We see the whole picture already. We have been waiting for you to see it too. She sat with that for a long time. Then she said, okay. Okay, Kehinde repeated carefully. Can you be more specific? Okay, I'm not running. Okay, I want to understand what this is. Okay. She looked at each of them in turn. Okay, I have been kissing all 3 of you and feeling different things with each of you, and none of those things contradict each other, and I think that's the most honest thing I have to offer right now. The silence was different now. Softer. Kolade stood. He came to her side of the table and offered his hand, and she took it, and he lifted her to her feet with that same unhurried intention. Then tonight, he said quietly, close to her, let us show you what it is to be loved by all of us. Completely. Nothing hidden. She looked past him at his brothers. Taiwo had risen too, his jaw set, his eyes bright. Kehinde stood at the end of the table with his hands at his sides and an expression of such concentrated tenderness that she felt it physically. Yes, she said. Show me. She had thought she might feel fragmented by it, 3 men, 3 different qualities of attention. She had been wrong. It was, instead, like being held by something large enough to finally hold her. Kolade was what he had always been, deliberate and warm, his hands unhurried, his voice low at her ear speaking words she would carry. He understood, instinctively, that she responded to being guided, not commanded, not controlled, but given a clear direction and trusted to choose it. Stay here, he said, and his voice made it a gift. Let us have you. Taiwo was what she had always known him to be, searching, immediate, his attention so complete she felt seen down to the layer of herself she hadn't known was visible. He kissed her throat and said, low and unadorned, "You are extraordinary," and she believed him because he said it the way he named colors factually, having looked. Kehinde was the revelation. Where she had expected the CFO's controlled precision, she found instead a patience so deliberate it bordered on devotion, a man who touched her as if he were memorizing her, who paused to look at her face between every new discovery, who said, only once, "Tell me what you need," and then listened to her answer with his whole body. 3 modes of loving. 1 woman. No competition. No edges where one ended and another began. They moved together with the ease of people who had always known each other's rhythms, who anticipated each other without effort, who had been waiting not just for her but to give her this. The experience of being loved by something larger than any single person could contain. She wept once, briefly. Not from sadness. What is it? Taiwo asked, his voice very soft. I've been trying to understand, she said, why I always felt like one man was never quite enough. And I thought there was something wrong with me. Nothing wrong with you, Kehinde said. Nothing, Kolade agreed. You were right, Taiwo said. One man isn't enough. Not for you. For this. He pressed his lips to her temple. Some people need the whole river. She laughed, a little broken, a little full. I need to call my mother, she said, to the ceiling. From 3 different directions, 3 different laughs. The same laugh. Her laugh. Something she would come to love. Chapter 10. What it becomes. She stayed for 3 months. Her return flight to Atlanta was booked, changed again, and finally surrendered. She called her job and negotiated a remote arrangement. She called her apartment landlord and negotiated a sublease. She called her mother and had a conversation that lasted 4 hours and ended with her mother saying, I always knew you needed more than one room. I just didn't know what shape the house would take. She learned the compound. She learned the city. She learned the Sigh brothers' house, a property on the lagoon that was vast and well-designed and full of beautiful things and almost breathtakingly in need of someone who would rearrange the furniture and put flowers on the table and burn incense in the mornings in front of a small altar she built, herself in the room with the best light. The altar was the first thing that made Kolade look at her with an expression she recognized as something shifting, permanently, inside him. Tell me about this practice, he said, standing in the doorway. You don't have to understand it, she said. Just respect it. I want to understand it. He came and sat beside her on the floor. Start wherever feels right. She started at the beginning. She talked for 2 hours. He listened with his full attention, asked 3 careful questions, and at the end said, Thank you for trusting me with it. She touched his face. Thank you for wanting to know. Taiwo painted her. Several paintings over time, none of which she was allowed to see while they were in progress. He worked in the studio at the back of the lagoon house, the door closed, emerging periodically to find her wherever she was and look at her with the focused intensity of a man cross-referencing a subject. Stop assessing me, she said once. I'm not assessing you, he said. I'm memorizing the way the light is coming through your ear right now. Hold still. Taiwo. 1 moment. It's going gold. He cocked his head. There. Beautiful. You may move. She moved specifically. She moved to him and kissed him, which disrupted the light considerably and which he did not complain about. The first painting he showed her was the 3 rivers. He had altered it in the months since she'd first seen it in the gallery. The woman at the center was no longer turned away. She was facing forward. Her palms were still raised. But her eyes were open now and they were looking directly out of the canvas, and they were, unmistakably, Anja's eyes. She stood in front of it for a long time. When did you change it? She asked. The day after you came to the garden, he said behind her. The day you said okay. Kehinde walked her through the family finances on a Tuesday morning in the library, with spreadsheets and documents and the patient precision of a man who believed that love without transparency was incomplete. It was a vast fortune. Old money built carefully by every generation. Present in 17 countries, conservatively managed, ethically structured in ways she had not expected and said so. My father believed wealth was a responsibility, Kehinde said. We maintain it that way. She looked at the numbers for a long time. You said my bloodline would change. Yes. My mother. My cousins in Atlanta. People I love. If you choose. On whatever terms feel right to you. She was quiet. Then, I want to establish something for my aunties here. Something lasting. A trust or a foundation or... Already drafted, he said. Waiting on your signature to determine the structure. He produced a folder. I took the liberty of anticipating. You can change any of it. She looked at the folder. Looked at him. You drafted this before I said yes. I drafted it, he said, because I knew you would think of it. Because I know how you love. He held her gaze. Anja. You came here because your father never brought you. You stayed because you found your family. Everything you have done in this place has been motivated by love. I prepared because I wanted to be ready to help you act on it the moment you asked. A small pause. Was that presumptuous? No, she said. It was. She didn't have the word. She took the folder instead, and she signed the things that needed signing, and when she was done, Kehinde took the pen from her hand and held it and her hand together for a moment, and said nothing, because nothing needed saying. Chapter 11. Full. The ceremony, when they had it, was small. Not a legal ceremony. The law in Nigeria was what the law was, and they were pragmatic people. It was something older than law, conducted by Auntie Adiz in the compound garden at dusk with the fountain moving and the night flowers opening and every member of the Okafor family present, and the Sigh family's oldest employees who had known the boy's parents. And Anya's mother, who had flown in from Atlanta and who stood beside her daughter with her hand in Anya's and tears streaming freely down her face in a way she didn't try to stop. Your father, Diane whispered to her daughter before it began, would have loved this. He would have understood it exactly. He would have said it's like a river, Anya said. Her mother laughed, wet and warm. Exactly. Exactly like that. Adiz spoke first, in Igbo, and Emeka translated for those who needed it. She spoke about the Okafor family and its history and its roots and the particular quality of Ravi Okafor's love, which had been large enough to build a family across continents and faiths and kinds. She spoke about the Sigh family and its history, and the parents who had raised 3 sons to be one unit and still distinct, and the courage it took to hold that configuration in the world. Then she spoke about Anya. She came here, Adiz said, looking for her father's country. She found it. And then she found something more. She looked at Anya directly. You are the point where the rivers meet. You are the woman in your husband's painting. You are the continuation of your father's best quality, the capacity to love without diminishment, to add without replacing, to hold many things at once and be made larger, not smaller, by the holding. She paused. Ravi would be proud. He is proud. And we are proud. You are home, my brother's daughter. You are entirely, finally, home. Anya did not try not to cry. She cried, properly, and was held from 3 sides. That night, late, after the celebration had wound down and the family had gone to their beds, and the compound was quiet, and the Lagos sky was doing its thing with the stars, she sat at the edge of the fountain with all 3 of them. No particular arrangement. Kolade with his arm around her shoulders, present and still. Taiwo leaning back on his hands, looking up, naming the stars in the way he named everything, like they were colors he was collecting. Kehinde beside her, his leg against hers, reading something on his phone that he kept turning to show her. Look at this, he said. The Egusi market in Enugu. Kehinde, Kolade said. No spreadsheets. It's an article. About the Egusi market. It's interesting. It is extremely not interesting, Taiwo said, without looking down from the sky. Anya, Kehinde said. Tell them it's interesting. She looked at the article. It is genuinely a little interesting. Thank you, Kehinde said, with dignity. I said a little. Taiwo laughed. Kolade smiled, his particular smile, the one that lived in his eyes before it reached his mouth. Kehinde returned to his article with the composed satisfaction of a man who had won on a technicality. Anya looked at the fountain. She looked at the garden. She looked at the compound walls that held all of this, the aunties asleep inside, her mother asleep in the guest house where she had stayed, all her father's family arranged around her like the walls of the house he'd always meant to bring her to. She had come here looking for the missing chapter. She had found an entire library. I want to tell you something, she said. The conversation around her stilled. They listened. They had always listened. I spent my whole life feeling like there was something wrong with me, because I kept falling for people and then the fullness wouldn't hold. Like I kept pouring into containers that were too small. She looked at her hands. I thought it was my problem. My fault. Something I needed to fix. She looked up. I was wrong. You were waiting, Kolade said. I was gathering, she corrected, and felt her father's guru's words in her mouth, finally making full sense. I was gathering until there was enough to bring. She looked at each of them. I brought a lot. You brought everything, Taiwo said. Simply. Completely. She leaned her head back against Kolade's shoulder. Taiwo's hand found hers. Kehinde's arm came around her other side. The fountain moved. The night-blooming flowers opened in the garden her father's family had planted and tended for 30 years, waiting. Somewhere in the main house, Auntie Ngozi was singing to herself in the kitchen, a habit she had whether anyone was awake to hear it or not. Anja Okafor Sigh closed her eyes and felt, for the first time in her life, the absolute and complete absence of the incompleteness. She had been gathering. She had gathered. She was full. Epilogue. 18 months later. Her mother visited for a month every year. She came in December, when the Lagos heat was at its most manageable and the compound was at its most alive with family, and the kitchen was running from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Diane Vasquez Okafor, who had raised her daughter between worlds and taught her to recite mantras and make egusi soup and carry her father's memory like a lamp, spent her December months at the Okafor compound being spoiled by aunties who had decided she was also, retroactively, family. She sat with Anya on the veranda one morning, watching the garden, tea in hand. How is it? Diane asked. The way she asked it meant everything. Not the polite version, the real one. Anja thought about the morning. She had woken early to do her practice, the small altar with its marigolds and camphor, the Gayatri mantra in the still air before the household woke. Then Kolade's arm, heavy and warm, pulling her back to bed for 20 minutes of the specific quiet that only existed with him, no words, just weight and warmth and presence. Then Taiwo at breakfast, turning the table into a studio by propping a sketchbook against the fruit bowl, talking at high speed about a new project while Kehinde read the financial news and handed Anja the sections she'd asked to be briefed on, which had become a habit that had become, in its way, a kind of intimacy. She thought about the family foundation she'd built in her father's name, the Anja Okafor Trust, funding girls' education across 3 states, with a board that included 2 of her aunties and one of Emeka's sisters and a woman from Enugu who had turned out to be extraordinary. She thought about the work she'd built remotely, expanded now, working with Nigerian cultural organizations, as well as her Atlanta clients. She thought about the particular shape of the life, its largeness, its warmth, its reliable fullness. It's everything, she said. Exactly what it is. Her mother nodded. Your father, Diane said, used to say that the best lives were the ones that surprised you into themselves. She sipped her tea. I think he'd say you have a very good life, Anja. From the garden below, Taiwo's voice rose. He was arguing cheerfully with Emeka about something, gesturing with a paintbrush he'd carried outside. In the library window above, she could see Kehinde's silhouette at his desk. Kolade appeared at the doorway behind her and set a hand briefly on her shoulder as he passed, headed somewhere, purposeful but present. Her mother watched all of this with the expression of a woman filing a memory carefully. He would say more than that, Anja said. She covered her mother's hand with her own. He would say, I finally found all my rooms. The fountain moved. Auntie Ngozi began singing in the kitchen. Anja Okafor Sigh leaned back in her chair in her father's country, under her father's sky, in her own life, finally and completely and without remainder. Full. The end. Where 3 rivers meet by Eloquence.